All right, welcome to the show. Are you uncomfortable or avoidant of tension? Do you tend to appease in order to feel safe? Do you abandon yourself and your truth in order to feel accepted by others? Welcome to the Recovering Nice Guy and Good Girl podcast. I'm Samantha Berke, registered psychiatric nurse, entrepreneur, and coach. And I'm here with my co host, Dr. Ari Graff, clinical psychologist and men's transformational coach. We've been the good girl and the nice guy, passively living our lives, letting it drag us along. Now we're committed to living our lives consciously, taking radical responsibility for ourselves and our relationships, and always growing and expanding. Today we have a very special guest, Doctor of Chinese Medicine, biodynamic cranial sacral therapist, certified yoga instructor, supermom, cook, baker, hostess with the mostest, ceramic artist, sewing specialist, and as she prefers to be introduced as, regular person, Priscilla Peach Lang. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for
Welcome.
having me, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
It's a
I'm
pleasure to
so
be here.
thrilled to have you.
Is
Yeah.
Peach your real middle name?
It's my real middle, well, it's my old last name. So my name used to be Priscilla Peach, like a cartoon.
Like
And
your maiden name.
my husband told me I didn't, yeah, my maiden name. My husband told me I didn't have to change it. I ended up changing it, but I dropped my middle name to keep my last name. So it's not hyphen, it's just my middle name. So, but yeah, Priscilla Peach. A lot of my friends just call me Peach, actually. They're just like, that's how they refer to me, Peach.
I
Yeah,
like that.
when I first became friends with you, I thought that was just a nickname. I have you in my phone as Priscilla Peach, but I did not know that that was like legit your name.
Yeah. That's legit my
It's
name.
very fitting. It's very fitting. For
Thank
sure.
you.
Um, well, I'm wondering if you can share just a little bit about yourself and your mission and how you help people.
Sure. I'm a full-time mom right now. I went to school and I got my doctorate in Chinese medicine, and it's a long program. And before that, I had become a yoga instructor, and somewhere in between there, went on this journey of working with the nervous system through biodynamic cranial sacral therapy. I had a small practice, and after I had my first child, quit my practice and was never able to return fully. I've stepped in whenever some of my other colleagues have gone on pregnancy leave or have stepped out for a little bit. But I have a special needs daughter. She got a heart transplant 5 years ago, and she's kind of like my numero uno patient. I really just recently became super passionate about dealing with pediatrics. So I have this dream whenever both of my kids, I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, they're starting school. So they'll be in school all day in this fall. And whenever I step back into work, I really want to work with pediatrics. I have a passion for children in general. But my other passion for life is my obsessive compulsive disorder with like yin and yang and duality and merging back to the one, like finding this deep connected peace, like this deep emergence back to like the source. And that's through interactions with other people. That's through a personal practice and my own connectivity. And that's through being an example to inspire other people, especially my children, giving them examples of, how sometimes life can be uncomfortable, but if we lean into it a little bit and have a trust or have a firm footing with where we're going, the storm doesn't last forever, essentially. With my daughter's heart transplant, I feel really firmly about that, so that like she doesn't have to face any fears as she gets older and understands her situation, that she really has something to like lean on, and that I can be a good example of what that looks like.
Wow, what a journey.
Yeah, she is Priscilla's magic in my eyes. As someone that I've personally done quite a bit of vulnerable work with, whether it's on your treatment table with cranial sacral therapy, on retreats, or in journey space, I want you to know what an impactful figure you are in my life. And I do see you as magnetic and vibrant and so full of life. And no one would know kind of what you've been through, just meeting you, and like your energy, it's just deeply felt. And I personally experience you as a very safe woman, like someone that I trust fully and can share very authentically with, even if it's something that I'm not comfortable with, or if it's even something that's about you that I'm feeling or noticing, that I feel really safe coming to you. And I'm curious what you attribute that to. Not everyone's like that. I don't know. Not everyone is like that.
So I think My position in life, I was born as the first child of all of the grandchildren in my family. My mom comes from four, she has three other siblings, so she's one of four, and she's the oldest. And so whenever I was born, I kind of had like a head start on everybody in the family. And so I kind of got to sit back and really watch the dynamics of people and their decisions and what they chose to do. And I come from, a long generation of very conservative Christians. So, the church I grew up in, we didn't listen to music. We like we didn't have instruments in our church. We were very conservative. And so I watched my grandma and my grandpa and their dynamics of the relationship. I knew they loved each other, but they didn't have like emotional intelligence to have deep conversations. And both of them have since passed, and I kind of watched their lives and how they went and how they ended. And it really got me thinking, like, what is this life about? Like, if we can't have peace and bliss, or if we can't get this connection with our family and with our friends, if we don't know how to, work with something outside of ourselves to give us this fulfillment, and I used to like, there's this like thing, if you see kids, they look a lot like their parents, right? A lot of times they have similar eye color, hair color, and features. And I started like, there's been studies that have shown that like even like trauma, like experiences can be passed down from generation to generation. And so,
Right. In intergenerational trauma.
in
Yeah.
an intergenerational trauma. But I believe like through my experience of like watching my family, this is watching my mom's sister and the dynamics between my mom's sister, my mom's mom. And now that my mom's sister has had kids, and we raised those kids in this home, and I've seen them grow up, and now those kids have kids, and I'm watching the dynamics between my aunt and her daughter after seeing the dynamics between my aunt and my grandma. And so it's like these habits or these behaviors that like also sometimes in my opinion don't get resolved or passed on. And so I have a sister that's 18 months younger than me, and we're very close, like literally like we can almost talk telepathically. It's very bizarre and insane, but we are completely opposite. Like, from like my colors are like black and red, and I drove like a 1973 Super Beetle. She was like a Mustang and like sports car, and really like preppy clothes all the time. We have different tastes and different styles. And there was this moment in my grandma's basement where like we had a conflict about something. And I really saw it happening. There's like this moment I was like, I'm never going to talk to you again. I was like, I'm just like, and then I thought, oh my God, I'm like, I've watched this dynamic. I watched it with my grandma and my aunt. I watched it between my mom and her sister. I was like, do I really want to repeat this? And I thought, so I stopped and I told my sister, I said, no matter what you do ever in this lifetime, I will always talk to you. I'll always love you, And that was like the first moment I thought, like, we have to be able to accept people and say, like, you're human and I love the essence of you, but that essence is also in a human vessel. And we have to allow people that opportunity, and we have to hear their stories out. And I really do think about that a lot. Like that instance has followed me for my whole life. And it was uncomfortable because at the time I really did just want to cut her out of my life. And honestly, I've been at that pinnacle multiple times since that day with my sister, where she gets into my skin so bad, but she's one of my greatest teachers and I love it so much. And every time I give her that opportunity and we give each other the opportunity to transform it, it becomes something even more beautiful. And because I've seen it happen in multiple relationships like that in my life, I'm like a firm believer, like you can't convince me any other way. And I just hope to like provide that for other people and show them what that's like, to yield and to listen and to try to understand and see if it's effective. And to this day, like it seems to be pretty effective to the receptive ones.
So I was curious, you grew up in kind of a conservative, sounds like fundamentalist Christian family. It's small town. You were the oldest. What was the impact of those experiences on you, and how did that shape your personality? And then it sounds like you've kind of broken from that environment into something else. So what was that transformation?
I think whenever I was So when I was in kindergarten, I was like a real social butterfly. My name was always on the board with like 2 checks, almost the third check. My mom was always coming to school, and it was like, I'd come home and I'd be like, I have so much homework to do, like in first grade, and my mom would come to school and she would get the teacher and she's like, what is going on? And the teacher would like kind of like pull me out and she's like, Priscilla, why don't you tell your mother why you have so much work to do at home? And I was like, because I talk all the time. I'm a terrible human. I can't pull it together in class, And so like, I went from this like, in grade school, I kind of like, went from, needing like a little bit of extra help in special education. And in third grade, I had this teacher. So we moved schools just to like one town over. And in third grade, I had this teacher, and I was writing like the basic papers, like the beginning, the middle, and the end, like one sentence type thing, getting the concept of how you start something and kind of go into it and then how you close it off, And he just came over and he's like, you're a really good writer. He's like, you're really good at this. And just that like little bit of somebody seeing me in a school setting and like encouraging me, I talked to my grandma about it, and she's like, they had this thing where like, if you do really good in school, she's like, it doesn't really count until you get in high school. But if you do really good in school, you can like graduate number one. And so then I just had this goal, and I just used like grade school, like to become like this, like you were talking about, like the good girl. Like I just wanted to get an A. I had a goal in mind. I wanted to do everything right, And so I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't, do a lot of like slumber parties. I didn't go out a lot. I didn't date for a very long time until I was like a junior in high school or sophomore in high school, So my life really was studies and sports a little bit. Like in junior high, I got into track and field and played a little bit of basketball. But so
was that your parents' expectation for you?
No, so honestly, I was in junior high. I think it was seventh grade. I was sitting there and they came on the announcements and they said, hey, we're having track and field tryouts. If you want to join the track team, like meet in the gym after school. Something in me heard that and was like, you have to do that. And so like, I literally just like a robot went to the thing. I didn't call my mom. She called the police because I didn't show up on the bus after school. She couldn't get a hold of me. This is before we had cell phones, So like the police are looking for me. My mom's like freaking out or whatever. I like get home late and I was like, I just went to this track and field meeting. And she's like her mind was like blown because I literally had no clue that I was going to do it that day. And I just went. And honestly, I had an amazing time in track and field. I went to state all 4 years in high school. This other kid I went to school with, his dad was really passionate about running. We revived the cross country team my junior year, and I went to state my junior and senior year. I mean, once I got to state in like a bigger pond, I like got squashed or whatever, but it was so much fun. And, but I think, going back to what you said about my family or whatever, like, because I was the oldest kid here, my mom watched my aunt's kids. So we actually, we spent a lot of time with my cousins here, and our house was always the house that all the kids got dumped at, and my mom also ran like a daycare. And because I was the oldest, I was helping feed and helping like change clothes and do things. So I spent a lot of time around babies and their nervous systems. And my mom used to have this thing that she'd tell me. She'd say, Priscilla, go put the whammy on this kid. And, like there's always babies that need to be put to sleep, but I could just put these babies to sleep. I always could put babies to sleep. My mom would call it the whammy. And when I started getting cranial sacral therapy, I was like, I knew the space immediately because I'd felt it before. I literally could feel the fight. Like whenever little kids get like, they kind of start like ratting around and you feel their energy, like fighting you and that tension. And like, that's where I feel like a lot of people get nervous. Like what you're talking about, like that tension in life, like that's where a lot of people get nervous, but like, I could just sit through it. And I was like, you just need someone to like stand your ground right now. And so I just hold the space for them. And before you knew it, like they're just like passed out like little bean bags in my arms, And so
wait, so is the whammy a device or is that your superpower? Right? I'm confused.
I think I don't know. I mean, it's just the term.
I was picturing one of those vibrating chairs things that we put kids in sometimes.
So it was just me, but I had like a breath to it, and I had like a bounce in a way of like, it was like I don't even know where it came from. It literally like I had a breath that I did, and like in a way that I bent my knees and bounced these kids and rocked them, and I walked around with them. Yeah. So my mom, because she would watch me, and she's like, "What are you doing up there?" Like I mean, I'm like 9 years old. I'm like I'm young at this point. This is for years that we did this. And but yeah, she would call it the whammy. And but I just
Go put the whammy on that kid.
Go put the whammy on that kid. And so like, I just go pick up the kid, but I think that's why I really enjoy, that's another thing. I really enjoy the tension. Cause like, not only have I experienced this, like tension in emotions in my adult life, like with my sister or whatever, but whenever I was younger, I felt it in the nervous system of babies. I could feel whenever they were fighting a nap, and I could feel that I needed to like balance that out. I couldn't like, jostle them around or move them around. Like I had to stand firm. I had to be the absolute opposite of that. And it worked every time, so like,
That's so interesting to like think about, because as you're saying this, I'm thinking about like when my child was very young, when Connor was little. And from my childhood and what I experienced, like anything that was like anger or frustration or someone being upset, like made me feel so uncomfortable. Like it was my responsibility. And so when Connor was really little, if he'd be crying and we're at a restaurant, or he's crying and we're like on an airplane or something, it was so difficult I just wanted that to end, and
yeah.
obviously you have to sit with it because there's nowhere else to go. But my nervous system was not at peace,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that he sensed that and could reflect that.
Yeah. And we talked about how that's, when we're talking about being a nice guy or a good girl, how that's sort of a core component of it, is not having a comfort with feelings, like wanting tension and conflict to just go away.
I feel
like,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I feel like I had a really great mom. She stayed home with us when we were growing up, and my mom was kind of like a good girl. She was a stay-at-home mom. She didn't have her own finances. She kind of, like her and my dad loved each other and they had a really great relationship. But I know that there's multiple times in her life where the decision to stay was because she didn't have any other way, and, but what was interesting is that my mom is very intuitive also. And so she, I feel like she kind of did with me what I'm doing with my daughter. It's like, she was kind of like, hey, like, I may not be like doing these things right now, but I want to teach you so that so that you have the tools to use them, and she saw that like, I had things that, my magnetism and my ability to do things, and she really like invested a lot in that. So like, I feel like I had a head start in a lot of ways, even though like my life in general had a lot of setbacks. Like I definitely came into myself like much later in life. But my story is mapped out and all of the pieces fit perfectly. But it wasn't, I didn't just like come out of high school like super, like the way I am now. I've much different now.
Well, it sounds like you were a high achiever in high school.
Yeah.
What happened after that? That's when things got interesting.
Okay. So Sam, you should have sent me the questions. No. So
we've gone off script already.
Holy crap. No. That's a really great question. I love this so much. So, I mean, if you really want to know, this makes me nervous posting it because I live back in my hometown now, honestly. So it's like, so in high school, I didn't really date a lot. And my mom, there was this boy in my school. So he was like the star of the football team and the star of the baseball team and the captain of the basketball team, so like triathlete all around. And I had met my current husband at a track meet, and we dated for a little bit, but ended up separating. And after we separated, my mom really had it out for my current husband. And so she kind of like cultivated an arranged situation with this triathlete in my high school. And because I was a good girl and I was like, this is the way you settle down when you're young, you marry in the church, he was going to church with my family. I was like, this is what's meant to be, like I can get an A on the test. I can memorize it. I can do it. And so I did.
Your mom wanted to set you up with him.
Yeah. Like on my 18th birthday, I got engaged in high school. It was super awkward, honestly. But like, it was like, there was a part of me that already knew it wasn't like it, I was like, oh, something in there, it just isn't right. But like, it was like, it's what I saw my grandparents do. They did the right thing. They never got divorced. They stayed together through it all. Is what my mom was doing. I was like, this is what you do. You just do it like this. And, and so, they had like a custom made ring for me, and he proposed to me on my 18th birthday. And he started going to church with my family. And I like this thing inside of me started like growing. It was like, hey, it's growing, you know? And I was like, oh God. And so I had to break the engagement off with him.
This thing as like the feeling that this
feeling this isn't right. I was like, so I like got the courage. I was like, I can't do it. I was like, here's the ring back. I can't do it, you know? Well, when I give the ring back, he's like living in my house. We built like an extra room in the house for him to live in, so that he kind of like moved in with my family, you know. He's going to church with them, and I'm going to college now, and you know, I'm staying at home going to college. I don't have a dorm room, you know, so it's like my options are to like sleep in my car, sleep at friends' houses. I mean, like, you know, my mom's just like blowing up my phone like, you need to come home and get your life in order. And so I started actually dating my current husband. Like I went to him and I was dating him, and but the tension in the house was so intense. Like there's so much tension that it just built up, and I ended up you know, I drove this 1973 Volkswagen, and I never buckled my seatbelt for like 2 years, never buckled. I was like, it's so old. It's a piece of tinfoil. If it gets in an accident, it's like literally has no chance. And I was like, and the seatbelt probably doesn't work. So I never buckled it. And so I was going on a date with
living life on the edge.
On the edge, yeah.
No seatbelts.
I go on this date, and my current husband calls me, and he's like, hey, buckle your seatbelt. I don't even know why he told me this. Like literally, it's the most bizarre thing looking back, but I buckle my seatbelt for the first time. I've never buckled this thing before. And driving on his house, leaving my chaotic environment to go on a date with him, driving to his house to go on a date with him, I had a narcoleptic attack where I like just fell asleep at the wheel. Like I just passed out. And as I passed out, because the car we sold doesn't have power steering, the wheels ripped to the right, because all the roads around here are like this on the back roads, you know, they have like a real like big slope situation. And I hit a ditch, and I woke up upside down in the air in my car. And as I was awake, I hit the hood first, and I felt my seatbelt hold me in. And I thought, well, I thought that thing wouldn't work, you know. And then the car rolled three more times, and I crawled out of the sunroof, and my mom like showed up like really crazy on the set on the you know, like this lady came running over to me across the cornfield, and I was like totally calm. Like I was like in total parasympathetic. So I was like just shocked and very chill. And I knew my name and my number. My mom flew to the scene, you know, because I was only about 12 minutes away from my house. And she was like so upset. But like the minute she saw my current husband's like little blue truck pull up, and she saw that it was him pulling up, and that's where I was going, and she put the two together, she like 180. She was like, you need to get your life in order. She's like, the devil's coming after you, and this is a warning, and the next time he's going to take your life. She's like, and so that day I actually drove to my current husband's house. I was like, we cannot be together. I've got to go be with this other dude. So I went back, I got re-engaged, I got married. Spent about 2 years before that feeling was just like I couldn't control anymore. And then so it eventually won this like push inside of me. I couldn't, it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't right. And honestly, like me and my ex-husband, we're not like super friendly or whatever, but we talk, you know. He lives down the road from me now, actually, in the same subdivision, now that I'm back home. And so like he actually, you know, he said, he's like, honestly, he's like, the day that we were on the podium getting married, he's like, I looked in your eyes, and he's like, and I knew, he's like, that you loved Tyler more. He's like, and so he's like, I knew that day. He's like, I shouldn't have, you know, we shouldn't have gone through with it, you know? And so that's just how life is, you know. I wouldn't change it for anything, because there's parts of that story that like that helped me out, that I'm like, oh, it was totally meant to be. It needed to be that way for me personally, you know. I can't speak for him, but yeah. So it was like, and then like from there on,
I was going to say, I feel like that ties in perfectly with something you and I were talking about. I don't know, it was a couple of days ago. The question is, abandoning yourself.
Yeah.
Is not abandoning yourself worth losing everything? Like that had to be a really scary
it was
so thing.
I mean, it was so hard. So it was so hard doing it the first time, breaking up the engagement. But because, so I try to tell people this, like, if you avoid tension and you avoid conflict and you don't listen to your inner voice, you're going to get served the same lesson down the road, and it's going to be 10 times harder. So breaking up the engagement was like, I was like, what I was feeling compounded by was the fact that he lived in my house. He was going to church with my family, and my own my own commitment to my religion, the conservative religion I had grown up in, so I felt a deep desire to make it work, but it conflicted with my authentic self. I felt that, and I
Mhm.
could feel it. So 2.5 years down the road, whenever it presented again, my inside, my authentic self could no longer be quiet again. Now I've been married for 2.5 years. Like basically everybody in my town contributed to my wedding. My grandma made my dress. One of the ladies from church made the cake. Like literally everybody participate. Like literally the whole town knew. Like I come from a small town. So now and then I also was going to school to be a doctor, which once I got married, I was like, well, why would I be a doctor? I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to raise my children. So I switched my degree to an art degree. So now I'm getting divorced. I had to drop out of college. I literally, in this small town that I live in, that everybody participated in, that everybody thought like I was really going somewhere, like I'm graduated number one, going to school to be a doctor. Now I'm like, I'm a divorcee in a small town in a lot of credit card debt. That's a dropout of college. Like, I mean, it's not the lowest that people can sink, but I was like, it felt really low. I mean, that was like really hard. But I was just like, man, if I just would have listened to myself the first time, it would have been a lot easier. And I think that people think like if they can just bite their tongue and make it through, once your authentic self starts waking up and you start advocating for it, if you do not, I feel like if you do not like listen to it and you try to stay where you are, it catches up with you. I have another example of this with, whenever I got on my first marriage, I was in a lot of credit card debt. I didn't know about credit cards. My ex-husband had opened a lot of the pre-approvals in my name once we turned 18. We were young and married. We were in college. And so I had a lot of credit card debt. And so I started working for AT&T. It's but for corporate AT&T and the cell phone company. And you could make like commission checks, basically. And so my family didn't speak to me after my divorce. My mom and my dad wasn't allowed to talk to me. My mom refused to talk to me. They went totally silent and actually kind of
How
like
about the
supported
rest
my,
of the town?
well,
Did the rest of the
I moved towns. It was so bad. I moved to Nashville, actually, Tennessee for a while, for like 2 years. But my dad did call me one day and I told him, I was like, listen, I'm drowning. I was like, I have no money. I have all this credit card debt. I have collection agencies after me, So he's like, here's what you do. He's like, you line them up from lowest to highest. He's like, you pay as much as you can. He's like, you pay your minimum amount on all of the highest to lowest ones, and then whatever you have left over at the end of the month, you just put that all towards the smallest one, and you start knocking them off. 1, 2, 3. I had like seven cards. Anyway, so I ended up doing that and being pretty successful. But so in my head, I used this job to get out. I was like, okay, this is just temporary. I'm going to use this job to get out of credit card debt. And so like once I got out of credit card debt and I was like working this corporate job, that voice came back again. It's like, okay, this job has served its purpose. You need to move on. But I was comfortable because I had insurance, like really super great insurance. I was making money and being able to save it now. I liked my friends. I hated the job. It was not like what I wanted. Like it was not what my internal thing wanted to do. But I was like, no, I'm comfortable. I'm like, shh, 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 shh. Just quieting that little thing down. I'm like, you got it so good. Stop making ripples. You got it so good. Well, my body started failing. Like I literally started having like anxiety attacks, or like the floor felt like it was dropping. I was getting super dizzy and spinning. After like my second or third visit to the emergency room, I was like, you know what? I literally know what's causing this. I like walked in and I told my boss, I was like, this is my last day. And I like literally quit the job with no plans. I had like no backup job. I had like no plan whatsoever. But I knew I couldn't do it anymore, but it was hard. Like if I would have done it in the beginning and been prepared, like if I would have been job seeking or like set myself up for success, but instead of setting myself up for success, I was like, oh, sit down, take a seat, you be quiet. And, it was 10 times harder, and so like, I've tried to learn that like, really, like, I think Sam, something you say a lot is that like, you really, if you see something, say something in your nervous system. If something arises, just take care of it. Around the house, if I see a coffee cup, I'm like, oh, I should put that coffee cup in the sink. Just take care of it. Just do it as it arises. It only gets worse. It only gets worse.
Yeah. Well, for me, like I think of that as, I don't know if I've ever discussed this on the show before, but that comes up for me as like the masculine and the feminine, right? Where the
Mm-hmm.
masculine
Mm-hmm.
is the doing, the feminine is the self expression. So if I see something around the house that needs to get done, do it in the moment. I'm not perfect at this, but like I'm training myself. If you see like the garbage is full, like toss it right now. If you see that this needs to get done, do it right now. Simultaneously, you're feeling inner conflict about something. Like for me, transparency is really important. And if I feel like I'm concealing something or something needs to be expressed, have the conversation right now.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, like my nervous system feels so at peace when I'm doing things as they come up and I'm expressing things as they come up. And the conversations that we have early on as it's happening end up not really turning into tension at all. But it's when you don't say anything and you hold it and you conceal it for periods of time, that's when the tension starts to build and
Because
build
it
and
gets
build.
compounded. Like I was saying, like it gets
Yes. And
compounded.
then
So
the
all
next
of a
thing you know, you're
sudden,
married.
yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I didn't even want to go on the date, but I felt uncomfortable with the tension, right?
Totally. And
So yeah, being
it
able to.
happens with everything. Yeah, it does. It's like it happens in life. It happens with like your to-do list. Like how many times have you not taken that coffee cup to the sink and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, now you have a load of laundry that has to be taken care of. And then there's more dishes. It like everything. That's why like I'm totally a big advocate. Like even if it's in just a conversation, like you're saying, if something comes up, just to like, because the mind is like fertile ground, right? And you have to be a gardener of your own mind. So like little things that like little things in the beginning are just little seeds, right? And if you can become a master gardener and be able to identify the seed before it's even planted, you've saved yourself like a ton of problem. But like if that little seed is like mint and then you don't tend to it, have you ever tried to pull mint up? Whenever I lived in Chicago, we had
No.
a mint frenzy, mint roots underground, like a viney, crazy system. It's like, it is insane. Like, always put mint in a pot because it is an invasive herb. And let me tell you, like, if you are not a gardener of your mind, there are some seeds that are like mint. They get so far in there that to get them out later, if you don't just like nip it in the bud, like literally, like just take care of it from the beginning,
You gotta weed your mind.
You have to weed your
You gotta.
mind consistently. Do you know who pulls weeds the first day of summer and never pulls weeds the rest of the summer? No, you do it every day, a little bit every day, and you're like on watch for it. You have to, because your mind will grow thoughts and ideas from things planted in it. And the thing about the mind is that like the subconscious and the conscious can't really differentiate from each other. So you have to be careful what you're putting in there and you're dreaming about, right? Because it's like these things that you're growing you can really manifest them into reality. They can really become like manifested. And so knowing what you're putting in there is really important.
I really like that, being like a gardener of the mind. If you ever do a podcast, maybe that'll be the name of your podcast. But it's what we put our attention to is what's going to grow, whether that's something positive or negative.
Totally.
Well, and that's the thing, when you don't speak it, it doesn't go away. So you're constantly thinking that and feeling it, and then the next thing happens that's kind of similar, right? And it just keeps that same thing, the same story keeps running, but you're not expressing it.
Totally. And as
it
runs, it changes, right? Like sometimes the story changes. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to say it this way. Okay, what if they say this? Okay, I'm going to change it to be this. And so all along, though, you're also eliciting an emotional response. Because like I said, you can't really differentiate between your subconscious and your conscious. Like on a certain level, the brain doesn't differentiate, And so like, at some point you're eliciting emotions, like you're getting yourself all riled up, And so, that's why I think it's really important to like really express things as they come, because then they are like, they're least likely to have a large amount of emotions attached. You're just like, hey, this pinged me in my nervous system. I'm feeling, and you express how you're feeling about it. Maybe you're feeling nervous about it. Maybe you're feeling shocked by it, and you get it out there before, like, because your brain wants to solve a Rubik's Cube. If it gets a problem in its head, or like if it feels something in your body and it's like, okay, I got to figure out what this feeling is. I got to get it out there. If you just let it keep on spinning and spinning and spinning, you're going to end up in a different place than where you started. So it's better just, I think, just come forth, no matter how hard it is to say it or talk about it. And it really does create a safe space for people. It inspires other people to do the same thing. And so, I mean, and that's, like I said, that's just my experience I've had.
So was the, so the AT&T job, you left that, would you say that broke your pattern of self-abandonment, or did that come up again for you? Or do you think that's just something that we all have to repeatedly deal with?
You have to repeatedly deal with it. You're always going to, yeah, you're always going to put up there, it's always going to show up again. Like, hey, are you going to abandon yourself? Like it's never easy to choose yourself. It just gets harder and harder sometimes, honestly. I did though. That's whenever I went to yoga school. I was a nanny for a little bit in the city, just trying to get my bearings, and I ended up going to yoga school and started teaching. And that's kind of where, like, satisfied, like my heart was like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. And then I was just teaching and kind of just chilling, teaching a little bit, and then I was like, hang on, I was like, I want to help people even more. And so then I went to school to get my doctorate in Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And then during that course of things, a lot of my old traumas started coming up. So I started having these, like, just like doing school, how I used to do school. So, like, even though I was on my right path again, I had only experienced being a student trying to get an A, right? So just showing up, memorizing, and doing the work. But I really had a desire to know the information. And so I was having a lot of conflict, and a lot of this, like, these panic attacks start to, like, arise again. So I started seeing a cranial sacral therapist in Chicago, and she changed my life. Like, and it's interesting and funny because, like, after a while of seeing her,
Why craniosacral therapy? Why did you choose that path? You're getting panic attacks. Like, why didn't you see a therapist or some kind of mental health?
So I went to school with this girl. She was also in the program, and she was just starting, and she recommended it as therapy. And I thought, well, it's a start for something. And immediately after my first session with her, I understood it from the whammy. I don't know what led me to her, how it happened, but this is just how it unfolded and happened. And I understood the space almost immediately. I was like, the language that she was using, talking about the way the nervous system operates and the felt sense in it. Like, I had been feeling the nervous system since I was 8, like just feeling it from other people and from, like, little kids, and understanding this dynamic. So I was a beginner on her table. I was like a baby, and I was, like, so hungry for the information because, like, like I said, I had experienced it, but I didn't have the actual knowledge of what I was doing or what I was feeling. And so a lot of my work now is regulating nervous systems and understanding, like, energy can be a felt sense. There is a felt sense to the nervous system where you can feel the dynamics. And so when you talk about masculine and feminine, like, I feel that when someone is presenting themselves to me, I can tell, like, what amount they're functioning in their feminine and masculine, like how they're coming to me. And I feel like one of the things that, like, because I've worked for so long with this kind of energy, is that understanding the balance to be met, to kind of yield and create a space for people to really show up however they're expressing. Like, if they're showing up full blown feminine, or, and emotional and crying, or if they're showing up masculine with, like, 8 walls up, we're going to get stuff done. And I'm like, okay, like, I feel like I can work with all of it, because I'm like, I see you, I really see you. And so
Can
yeah,
you can you can you actually explain a little bit about what craniosacral therapy is? Because I actually don't.
you don't
I don't
know.
know.
Yeah. So, if you're going to go see a cranial sacral therapist, you're going to get in there and you're going to think, what is this? Like, because they're probably going to lay you on the table and put their hands on a couple, like, underneath your shoulder and on your ankle or something, or on your wrist and on your ankle. And they're going to walk you through a body scan. And so it's really non-invasive. And, half of the treatment is a guided, like, kind of like a guided meditation. And then the last half is kind of silent. And so, but as a practitioner, it's an embodiment education experience, I would say. So you are literally helping people to become embodied. So our nervous system kind of expands out off of us, and then it comes back in, and our nervous system does this, like, almost like your lungs expand and contract for breathing. This is the natural rhythm of the nervous system, and it's kind of going out. If you've ever been somewhere and your spidey senses kind of tingle because you're like, it feels a little creepy, or I feel unsafe, that's just your nervous system leaving your body, and then kind of checking your environment, and then coming back to yourself, and checking in. And so the body scans, these guided meditations, are to help the brain. So it's basically overloading the brain with, like, visuals of, like, kind of following the skin and getting as close to your skin as possible. So when you talk about not abandoning yourself, that's a practice of like cranial sacral. It's like being in your skin, because your brain can leave you. Your brain is part of your nervous system. I can be right here with you on this thing, but I could be thinking about the laundry that needs to get done, how I have to go pick up my daughter from summer school at 1 o'clock, like my mind can be, and I can be talking to you right here, but to be fully present, like those things are wiped from my board. I am in my body. I'm seated in my chair, And so it's to really help people understand that their mind is like it's on a fishing rod, right? And so if you're fly fishing and you cast that puppy out into the ocean, you can physically be there with the rod, but like your mind is like miles out there. And so it's a teaching of people how to reel their mind, reel their nervous system back to the actual pole, the center line, and to be present with that. And then from that space, they can really say like, oh, like I can feel my body, and your body can educate you, that nervous system feeling like, oh, I didn't like the way that felt. And you can start to use language to express it. You can start to use that to navigate you. So if that makes any sense.
I thought it was more like the craniosacral therapist doing physical manipulations.
Yeah, so definitely. So cranial sacral therapy, so biodynamic cranial sacral therapy is it's cardiovascular based and nervous system based off of embryology. But original cranial sacral therapy was formulated by osteopaths. So yes, definitely manipulations of the cranium and the sacrum, because that's where your brain and then your spinal cord goes all the way down to the sacrum. That's where the nervous system expresses itself. So if there's any compression in those areas, they used to physically manipulate. But the subtle version that I practice, like, so as the branch got more subtle and moving towards the cardiovascular system and the nervous system, what was recognized was that if you help people embody themselves and get to a relaxed state with their parasympathetic nervous system, the body naturally knows how to correct itself. It doesn't need manual manipulations. The temporal lobes actually have like a wobbly wheel movement. The sacrum kind of it has its own rhythm. It's a tiny movement, but it has its own like movement. And so when these spaces get locked up, it causes compression in the nervous system. And so osteopaths used to release the bones of the head and the sacrum, but the body will naturally do it. The body wants to be in balance. It wants to find balance. And so when you're totally in your parasympathetics, when you're totally embodied and you feel completely safe, you're like, people will lay on my table and they'll like just be twitching. Like they're just self-adjusting. You just see their whole arm twitch and like their leg fly up in the air and like their bodies move, and their bodies are just self-adjusting and correcting the alignment of their bones so that it can create optimal blood flow, optimal movement between like the little, the nerve flossing like canals or whatever. And so, yes, you're totally correct.
That's what I experienced.
But yeah, like in my practice, it's more, it's much more gentle, and like there's no manipulation.
They always, when people ask me if I refer them to her, I always refer to this example of like a gazelle being chased by a cheetah. And when they're being chased and they get away, they usually go off to themselves and they shake like that fear, like all of that nervous system response out of their body. But we don't do that. We just like compress it down and into our body and walk around feeling that.
Yes.
And so when I would go to see her, my body would be just crazy twitching, legs twitching, just muscle twitching.
So interesting. Yeah. I'm trying to remember where I interrupted you in your story.
No.
So I think I was asking you about, does the self-abandonment ever end? And I think, your point was that it's a recurring thing. It's something that we always have to sort of notice and observe and then self-correct.
Yeah. Well, I would also just like to, for my own journey, like I feel like, I know myself a lot, but every day I'm learning more, so like self-abandonment. So it's like, as like, if you're on a journey to like self-awareness, I don't believe like you reach self-awareness and then you're like enlightened about yourself, like I consider myself a student of life. Every day I show up and I'm like, I feel like, I always want to be a learner of myself and of the things around me. And so, as I gain more information and knowledge, and I start to construct this thing, like my value system, that are like real deep truths for me, as they become revealed and as they change and evolve. Like, self-abandonment may look different, like there's stricter guidelines on it, like what I can tolerate and what I can't, because I just turned 40 in March. And so it's like one of those things where, like, whenever I'm thinking of my life, my decisions and the way I think about abandoning myself, I'm more passionate about now than I was maybe whenever I was 20, like, because I just look at life differently, like I just feel like time, like, and also with my daughter's health, I feel like a lot of people walk around with the luxury of a veil that, like, especially when they're in their healthiest, strongest, fittest form of life, that, like, life goes on forever. But, like, there's a hard reality that, like, nobody makes it out of this alive type thing, and it does have a timeline. So it's like, what do you want your life to be about? What do you want to explore and express? Like, what do you want? Like, how do you want to, even if you only change one person's mind or you make one person feel safe, like, how do you show up as your best self and create space for people, and so that's like it's a really important part of my life, and does it hurt people's feelings? Yes. Does it cause lots of emotion and tension sometimes? Yes. But it's like, I've already lived this many years and seen that it does work. If you can get through the tension and you can get rid of the emotions and come to just an open, transparent, vulnerable place, like, it will truly transform you. I always say, like, it's the pressure that makes the diamond, right? Like, like, it's just this alchemy, this transformation, this chemical reaction. You'll see it, in lots of different areas of life.
There's a lot here. I think the last thing that I wanted to ask about was, we talked about self-abandonment, but Samantha, you were telling me about this other concept of self-devotion. So how does that go along with self-abandonment?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you both can chime in, but
Yeah.
is
Well,
self-devotion the antidote to self-abandonment? Is that something we can practice?
yeah, I would say that through my experience of abandoning myself most of my life, and recognizing, I was just talking to her about this. There was a long period of time I didn't know how to express myself. And so I would just feel things in my body. And I didn't know really how to organize or structure my thoughts and my feelings. I just would just feel inner conflict constantly and didn't have the framework to express myself. And so as, my life progressed and I started to learn things, and through the dating experience, learning certain tools, learning the framework of radical authenticity, starting to practice sitting with myself and feeling and getting clear about that. What am I feeling? What are the words that I can clearly attach to that? And then adding that extra layer on top of the skill of understanding what my values are. Now my heart and my throat, my self-expression, and my thoughts, my values, understanding what those are, they're all in alignment. And now that I know these, I have all of these pieces together, I could never abandon myself ever again. I just feel it. I'm so sensitive now to it. And I can see, as Priscilla says, the seed. I can see it so instantaneously that it's like, I don't want to plant that seed. I know exactly what I'm feeling. I feel it in my body. I understand it in my mind. I know the value that I'm butting up against. And it's nothing personal against this person or whoever it is that I'm interacting with. And I'm not trying to cause any harm. I just know I'm so devoted to myself that this needs to be expressed and we could talk about it. And so that's kind of been the progression of my experience. And I don't think you can ever move backwards from that. I mean, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying, you've really transformed. That um, you won't abandon yourself again like you have in the past. You might have sort
No.
of micro self-abandonments.
Yeah, and I'm aware of time and space right now, but Priscilla is kind of like I look at her as an inspiration because I see her as very devoted to herself, and I see her not afraid to express herself or to emote. And I also see her not only devoted to herself, but also very devoted to her family and devoted to her husband and just this like service mindset. And I think that's like the next layer for me. Like, I don't think that I'm like evolved, I made it, no, I feel like there's more layers, right? So I'm like really excited about like being a student of life and kind of letting the more pieces come together.
Do you want to add anything, Priscilla?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I can definitely say from like the first time, like Sam came to me to be on my table, and I was treating out of my home because I'd already had my daughter. And, just the way she showed up, she was at the beginning of her journey. And it's been a pleasure to have followed her up until this point and to see how, like, for me, being a witness to someone's journey, to seeing someone be so liberated, whether it's guilt and shame or like religious things or traditions or pressure from outside sources of some sort, to see someone become liberated and feel that freedom, it is a real pleasure. And it reminds me that like I always want to do that work. Like I don't ever want to put myself in a cage again. And I want to help as many women and men that are living in cages to find the door to fly, because I think that it only leads to a freer flow. It only leads to more love and understanding. It only leads to more connectivity. And it feels so good that people sometimes can't imagine how good it feels to finally say like, this is me, like, and this is all of me, the ugliest parts, the best parts, like, do you still love me? And for someone else to say like, I do still love you. And there's freedom in that, and there's peace in that. And I want that peace for everyone that I love and care about, and for strangers that I don't know yet. And so I just if someone, if I were to write a book and I would be really honest in my book, people would look at my life and be like, oh my God, what a terrible person. I'm sure of it. And I know, and you're probably in your head, I don't know what your thoughts are to that right now, but I promise you, like, I have not done pretty or nice things in my life. Everything that I've done has, I've tried to make right, and I've tried to learn and grow from it to be like a higher vibration of myself, to inspire people. And I think that's the best thing we can do, help people to unfold these things, to become liberated, to find their best higher selves, and to really experience human connectivity.
It seems like a great place to end. Now I feel like I need to get on the table, the cranial sacral therapy table. Well, thanks again.
That's a real honor for you to say that. Thank you, Ari. I appreciate that.
Thanks again for joining us. We'd love to have you back. And thanks to the listeners for being part of the Recovering Nice Guy, Good Girl show. And if you're watching this on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. This helps us reach more men and women. And if you're listening on any other podcast platform, make sure to subscribe there as well. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.